anatomical drawings and painting. But this is unusual, the painter going into the operating theatre to watch and record traumatic surgery to the faces of his subjects as it happens. The pictures will go on show at the National Portrait Gallery from Wednesday. Our culture correspondent Madeline Holt reports on how it has changed the patients' lives.
Making faces by brush or by scalpel. Surgeon and artist have a creative affinity of sorts. They've come together in a pioneering project. Patients having major reconstructive facial surgery have had their medical progress recorded by a portrait painter. The psychological effect on them has been remarkable.
I was very surprised at the extent to which the portraiture was helping the patients. Traditionally, art therapy, the emphasis is on the patient creating the artwork, and we know that that works. We were a bit unsure as to exactly how much this would help the patients, but it's helped them tremendously. And what's nice is often it's empowering the patients to use the portraits as coping mechanisms themselves.
The project was originally intended to change public attitudes to facial disfigurement. Its value as therapy was unexpected. The young Scottish artist Mark Gilbert worked at Bart's and the Royal London Hospital for 18 months, sponsored by the consultant surgeon Iain Hutchison. The patients who took part agreed that their pictures before, during and after surgery would eventually go on show. Involving them was approved from the start by the hospital's ethics committee. Chris Pavlou has found particular solace in his portraits. An actor, he was beaten up by a gang with baseball bats, leaving him blind in one eye.
I get miserable in the winter. I think it's to do with the light. And I always pull this picture out around about December, January. And the psychological effect that it has on me is that, you know, what have you got to worry about? At least you're alive, and you should be grateful that you are alive. But when I'm dead and buried, yeah, I reckon these will live on. It'd be, I don't know, might even become a Rembrandt or something like that. A Mona Lisa or something. But
Roland Scott had cancer of the upper jaw. He thinks being painted has given him the confidence to take on people who question his appearance. He usually carries photographs of his portraits to help tell his story.
I would have been sort of like a tortoise to sort of go back into a shell, whereas being involved in this, it brings you out and you can cope with it a lot easier. When I was coming down this morning, I stopped at the motorway services, and 3 boys of about 17, 18 just sitting there staring. So I thought, well, here we go. I went over to him and I said, look, is there a problem? He said, no, we were just discussing your face. So I didn't have my photos, but I went into all this field, you know, and they ended up pretty nice lads, you know. But another lot have been educated.
The pictures break free from traditions in both portraiture and anatomical painting in their honest portrayal of a patient's physical and emotional journey. Pictures of anatomy lessons, like this one by Rembrandt, were particularly popular in 17th century Dutch painting. They were about surgeons for surgeons, a celebration of a growing understanding of the human body. And for centuries, portrait painters have cared less about accuracy, more about flattery, or they'd lose commissions. Mark Gilbert had a different kind of pressure, not to shy away from imperfection.
I was, slightly anxious at the beginning. I'd be focusing on things with the patients that would either be too sensitive or that they would rather I'd be reminding them of things that they would rather forget about and so on. And these were all things that I was, incredibly worried about at the beginning. I also didn't know how I was going to react in the operating theatre, how I was going to cope with that.
Gilbert found himself humbled by being allowed to witness a life-changing moment. He had to do away with his usual emotional isolation from his subjects.
As much to get me through the project, I was actively seeking their opinion right the way through the whole process, and also actively wanting. They all had incredible stories to tell, and they would be incredibly frank and open with you. Which was, again, you felt privileged. And certainly I think the more I got to know the patients, the richer the pictures became.
interesting findings of this project is how much the patients seem to prefer looking at a painted portrait rather than a photograph. Not only did they find it more emotionally truthful, but they found that looking at someone else's impression of their face offered a certain distance that, perhaps surprisingly, they found easier to accept.
Some patients who love their portrait won't look at photographs taken of themselves even now. Portraiture seems to get over a lot more, not just the physical appearance of the patient, but also their personality, their expressions. What they feel about themselves is coming through the portraiture.
But why should anybody going through traumatic surgery feel better looking at a picture of their altered face?
The portraiture, in many instances, told a story. They had a beginning where they came to Mr. Hutchison, or the surgeon. They were operated on, and then they're there as they are now. And this story recounts to the patients what they've been through, the extent of what they've been through, and they've come out the other side. And this enables them to often adopt a fighting spirit. They've been through this, so they can cope with anything in the future.
The next stage in the experiment is to find out how people who come to see the show react to some of the pictures. It's hoped the exhibition won't just challenge perceptions, but prompt donations to the Saving Faces charity, set up by Barts and the Royal London to fund more research into the neglected area of facial deformities. Bringing the comfort of portraiture to more patients is likely to depend too